All right, hello, and good day. You have stumbled across Critical Mess, and this is the podcast where three muchachos in the marketing business get together and talk about movies that critics and audiences do not agree on. You are locked and loaded here for episode 8. I am Nick Honeywell. I am here with a couple of other guys. One's name is Grizz Griswold, otherwise known as Andrew. The other is Mr. Brian McCullough. Gentlemen, salutations. Say what's up to our listeners, please.
What's up, everybody?
Hey, this is Brian McCullough here. My fifth favorite movie of all time is The Fugitive. The Fugitive.
Great pick. Great pick.
What do you think about that, Grizz?
I think U.S. Marshals was better.
Oh my!
Goodness gracious.
Stop recording.
Stop
this guy?
recording now.
All right, we're going to start, as always, gentlemen, with an icebreaker here. This week's icebreaker is, what's a movie you will never, ever watch again, but that you thought was a 4-star, classic, incredible film?
Road to Perdition is the first one that comes to my mind.
Manchester by the Sea, for sure. I'll probably never watch that again.
Well, I'm glad you rated it a
But I
4-star
rated
classic,
it,
though. Nice.
I did rate it
respect
very
that.
highly. So, yeah.
Very good.
I think I'm going to go with Black Swan, which I really thought was a great movie, but man, that was tough. And then another runner-up is The Pianist. It was just a rough movie. But
when that little kid gets tries to escape under the wall or whatever, that scene,
it just
brutal.
Few movies are as emotionally powerful as that one. But
I've actually seen Black Swan more than once, so
have you?
I think I'm a little
Brave man.
fucked up in the head,
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's probably why you are the way you are.
and I'll probably watch it again.
So before we jump into tonight's film, a brief caveat as always. We're going to have spoilers about this film, even though it came out in the 90s. We will be talking about it extensively, so there will be lots of those, and you have been warned. So tonight we are talking about an explosive, convulsive, and to some downright repulsive film. That is Armageddon from 1998, directed by Michael Bay, our second Michael Bay film. We have noted there won't be any Michael Bay for a little while. Everybody calm down.
Whoops.
But
Sorry, everybody.
We are talking Michael Bay again. And this movie also notably produced by the great and influential Jerry Bruckheimer. In terms of who is starring in this movie, it might be better to go over a list of who is not starring in this movie. It is a fucking stacked cast. I mean, wow. I went through it last night, and I was, quickly familiar with, I believe it was 13 of the actors and actresses in this movie, which, I mean, I'm not sure there's another movie out there where I'm like, I definitely know all, like 13 people in it and can name other movies they're all in. Like, that's crazy. Who is in this movie? So I will also say this list does not include Charlton Heston, who did the narration for this film.
Was that Charlton Heston at the beginning?
It is.
Oh, I loved the voiceover in the beginning.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was right before he died. Yeah, he died that same year that the movie came out. But in terms of people that I've heard of that are in this film, of course you have Bruce Willis, Billy Bob Thornton, Ben Affleck, Liv Tyler, Will Patton, Steve Buscemi, William Fichtner, Owen Wilson, Michael Clark Duncan, Peter Stormare, of course from Bad Boys 2, always Michael Bay's go-to Russian. Keith David.
He's great in the Frogger episode of Seinfeld as well. by the way.
Oh yeah, right. He is. Yeah, he is. He is great in that episode. Where was I? Keith David, Eddie Griffin, Udo Kier. Those are just the people I know. And by the way, Udo Kier was my top choice to play the villainous Nazi doctor in a Nazi zombie screenplay I was working on back in like 2006.
Oh, keep writing that.
Yeah, well, it's done. It's done, and the laptop it was written on is probably at the bottom of the Atlantic right now somewhere because I think it got thrown away. But
who does he play in the movie? The guy you just said.
He's one of the doctors that's evaluating the team for NASA.
Okay.
He's like asking them questions in a room. It's just him and the other.
He was in Blade.
Yes. Yeah, he's a great vampire.
Yes.
I love him. He's awesome.
While we're talking cast, who's the guy? You may have said his name, which is why I'm asking. Who's the guy who plays the voice of the president on Rick and Morty? The black guy.
I don't really watch Rick and Morty.
Shoot.
Oh, it's probably Keith David though.
Okay, Keith David, I think sounds like he kind of got the real deep voice.
Yeah, Keith David, absolute boss.
I love him.
Me too.
And by the way,
me too.
The president on Rick and Morty is one of my favorite characters in all of animated television, and almost maybe all of television. So
You've tried to convince me to watch that multiple times, and many people have, but I just can't get into it.
Well, you've been on record saying you don't. Well, you've been on record saying
Yes.
you don't watch animated things or things with subtitles. So
Yep. That's pretty
you're
hard
lucky
on my
that
part.
you're part of this podcast.
I know. That's part of it.
So Armageddon, the highest grossing movie worldwide in 1998, the second highest grossing in America or North America. And would you guys care to venture a guess at what number one grossing in North America was that year?
Saving Private Ryan.
Bingo.
That was.
Bingo.
I
Wow.
promise that was just right out of my brain. I did
Great
not look
guess.
Yeah, impressive. This movie, however, worldwide beat Saving Private Ryan. 550 million total. On Rotten Tomatoes, this film is ranking at 38% with critics and a pretty healthy 73% with audiences. So, gentlemen, let's get into it here. I think we typically start by talking about, our first exposure to this film. How many times have we seen it? Where did we see it the first time? So let's talk about it.
I believe the first time I saw it was sitting next to a girl by the name of Susie Kuhlman, who was my girlfriend at the time.
That sounds made up.
Promise. Well,
You did not date girls, no.
Hey, we barely dated. It was actually I dated her out of spite.
Was Susie Durkins?
It wasn't Susie Durkins or Susie Jenkins, but it was Susie Kuhlman. I started dating her out of spite because my friends told me that I was too afraid to ask her out, even though I didn't like her. So I asked her out and dated her out of spite. Anyway, we went to see this movie, and like I said, we were in a row of, I don't know, probably 12, 16, 15, 16-ish year olds. So pretty good date movie. And then I probably watched it in the theater twice, bought it on DVD when it came out. I've seen it maybe, I don't know, 8 times, including yesterday.
Okay. Yeah. This is 98, correct? So I was not very old, so I definitely don't think I saw it in theaters. So I think the majority of this was probably like summers, watching it at a friend's house or on repeat on whatever cable channel was on at the time. So this has a lot of rewatchability. So I think I've seen it just so many times after the halfway point, after the end scenes, or after the front, or whatever it is. But I've had to have seen this film 30 times over the years, just on and off through cable and all the repeats and stuff like that.
At a 2.5-hour runtime, that's like,
well, I'm just saying, like, if you
weeks.
count that, I'm just saying, like, I catch the last half or the last quarter or the first quarter or something like that. But
it's a long one.
So you are listening to Critical Mess. We are talking about Armageddon with Grizz and Brian. And my experience with this movie is I certainly saw it in the theater right when it came out. I can't recall for sure the exact, I was going to a lot of movies that summer, surely. I know I went to this one. I definitely remember enjoying it. This movie was like really the quintessential summer blockbuster. Like, kind of in every way. And I probably have seen it since then. I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 other times, including last night. So yeah, we all know this movie pretty well. So let's now talk about how we rate this film.
Well, I don't rate it as highly as I rate the other world-ending comet movie of that year, which was better in my opinion. Although it does not have good critic or audience reviews. Of course, that being Deep Impact.
Yeah, of course. Yep.
Same year. I rate this 61 out of 100. So it's probably the most mediocre I've been on a movie yet. And I'm a little conflicted about that because I've got so many conflicting feelings and thoughts and emotions on this. But I'm right there at a 61.
we were very close to finishing our classes.
Oh, what are you at?
63.
Oh!
So one of the rules, as you may or may not know from previous episodes, is if we do, for some chance, get the exact same score, we have to all finish our classes of whatever we're drinking. So
don't tell me you're at a 62.
Guys, it's at the top of this page. At the top of
Oh,
this page.
wow.
We were very close.
It's a 60.
60.
It's a 60. So we're
Jeez.
all within 3 points. Wow. Damn. I bet that doesn't happen again.
that will never.
Here's what I'm really, right off the top, what I'm really interested in hearing is knowing that we all rated the movie basically the same. It'll be interesting to hear how we talk about it differently.
Absolutely.
Like, will one of us feel a lot more hot on the movie, or one of us feel a lot more like we're shitting on the movie, despite having similar reviews? So this will tell us a lot about our process, which is really cool.
Yeah, those are very middle of the road reviews for me. I mean, 6 out of 10, or over the halfway point. It was good, but enjoyable, and not. It's hard because it's into the world, oil riggers trying to save the world. It's hilarious, but you kind of have to push that to the side. And
Oh yeah, we'll get into what's it's
Yeah.
got so much going on in
So
it. But
much.
I definitely a 61 for me is saying definitely did not waste my time watching this movie. I can see tons of stuff that's wrong with it, but I like the movie, and
Yep.
I'd watch
Yep.
it again.
So it's kind of tough to know where to jump in on this one, but I think one thing maybe we can just start by talking about, which I think is just important to address right out of the gate, is just what an assault this movie is on the senses in every way. I think you would be hard pressed to find a movie where more shit blows up or is on the verge of blowing up than this movie. And that's only one part of it. You've also got the how many 7,652,000 cuts, right? You've got the incredible, I mean, just the lighting and the effects and just everything is so fucking over the top. It is just it's incredible.
It's the type of movie where somebody pitches it to a studio and they go, "There's no fucking way you're going to be able to make that movie," and they made it.
And they did. And it's kind of ironic that you say that too, because I also don't think there's another movie, a more improbable movie, where more improbable, impossible things happen one after another, after another, after another. It's just lunacy. It's goofy as fuck, and it's enjoyable.
It is outrageously goofy, but I think the funny thing is like something went wrong at every step of the way for these guys, which is just incredible because nothing went right until the very last minute. So I think that's the best part about this film is like they were continuously against something every step of the way.
You know, it's like somebody who was on cocaine watched Apollo 13 and they just, you know how things just go wrong one after the other. And as soon as you think that everything's right, oh, we fucking don't have 100 pounds of moon rocks, so we got to recalculate everything, yada, yada, which I love Apollo 13. That's a classic, amazing movie. And they watched it and they went, let's do the same thing, but with like Michael Bay involved.
Yeah, it's
or maybe Michael Bay was the one on cocaine.
Yeah, well,
Still on cocaine.
Still.
Yeah.
it's basically like if you gave Apollo 13 a bunch of PCP and then turned on like a bunch of thrash metal, right?
Full quote.
Yeah, it's an insane experience. It's an experience, is really what it is. It's like an amusement park ride almost. It's like those things that were in the fucking mall, like you pay $5 and ride the roller coaster as the room kind of moves around with the this was like a very 90s thing.
Yeah.
That's like what this whole movie was. Like I almost felt like my fucking chair was going to start like moving back and forth, right? Like because it was just so kinetic.
I love the analogy to an amusement park ride because one of my notes was that this movie was somewhat fatiguing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of like a roller coaster, Roller coasters are fatiguing, but they're not bad,
Sure.
But they're not 2.5 hours long either.
Well, you'd hope not.
So why don't we talk a little bit about just getting right into why critics probably didn't like this movie and audiences did generally like this movie. Well, I think we've already talked about one element of that. Typically that really over the top, overwrought, everything exploding type of film is not it's not Oscar bait. It's not trying to be Oscar bait. So, that's certainly part of it, but there's more to it than that.
Yeah, and I thought I'd do something different this time around. I want to test this out. I didn't want to come in with a curated list of cherry-picked critic reviews because I feel like that's a little bit disingenuous. That's me going, hey, this is what all the critics think, but I really just pick out the ones that like all agree and like sort of agree with me usually. And I got a little, I don't know how I feel about that. So this time I did not read a single critic review. I've got them pulled up here. And I'm just going to go in cold and read one or two or whatever, and we'll see what we think. So I'll just read. I'll just look at the shortest one on this list. Here we go. Jay Carr from Boston Globe. Armageddon is big and noisy and stupid and shameless, and it's going to be huge at the box office. Big and noisy and stupid and
Accurate,
shameless.
I guess.
Pretty,
Accurate.
yeah.
Spot on. Yes.
Very stupid.
Yes.
Shameless.
Yes.
Okay. He's got it. Jay Carr's got it going on. How about another one? How does Armageddon, a movie obsessed with countdowns and countdown clocks, manage to redefine, downward, the standard for summer stupidity? Let me count the ways. Oh, clever. You're so clever, Joe Morgenstern from Wall Street Journal.
So that was one of my notes, was like, So how many nuclear bombs have like a giant digital clock countdown timer just showing when it's about to explode?
And also notice
great.
the beeping speeds up as you approach zero.
Yeah, I know, right. Yes. There's a very scientific purpose for that.
How about Desmond Ryan from the Philadelphia Inquirer? The special effects are the best that $150 million can buy, and the script plays like a near afterthought.
When did that review come out?
June 6th, 2014 was when it was. These were all added to Rotten Tomatoes, June 26th, 2014. So I don't know, probably when it came out.
Okay. That gets me away. But also, I need to say that it was nominated for 4 Oscars.
In what?
Do you want to hear them? All right.
Can I guess?
1999
Visual
nominees.
effects,
We have visual effects,
sound design.
best sound,
Okay.
and
Def
sound.
can't be editing.
Yeah, it was best sound, best effects, best visual effects, and then best music original song.
Oh, Missing You by Aerosmith.
Yeah, I don't want to miss a thing.
Oh my god, was that an original song for this movie?
I didn't realize that
So
when I saw it, but
that
it
is
was.
I did
their
not realize that
is their
either.
single like #1 top hit apparently from this film. That was like of all of their. I'll have to reread that stat, but it was their best song by far.
Sweet Emotion was the best Aerosmith song in this soundtrack, by the way. Of the two.
They had a lot.
This movie was heavy on that family. Yeah.
True. Liv Tyler. Yeah.
Yeah, awkwardly. Yeah, we'll get into that.
Yeah, that's awkward. That's really awkward. Yeah, I mean, these critic reviews, they're all just kind of saying it's. I'll read a fresh one here. Michael O'Sullivan, Washington Post. Armageddon peels your eyelids back and blows your eardrums out until rational analysis is moot. Very aptly put, I'd say. And that's a fresh rating.
Yeah.
There were a lot of fresh ratings on this one. It's alarming. But I'd love to see which ones were. I wish Rotten Tomatoes had like a better view into when these reviews were written versus just slapping them into the platform when it came out. But
Just want to remind everybody you're listening to Critical Mess. We are sponsored tonight by Basil Hayden's Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. We love it.
that's so good.
Todd McCarthy from Variety says, Bruce Willis saves the world, but can't save Armageddon. And I segue with that one to a point I'd like to make. Bruce Willis does not save the world. Ben Affleck saves the world. Bruce Willis sacrifices himself to push the button at the end. Ben Affleck comes and saves the failed dig at the end through his whole armadillo with the Gatling gun, Evel Knievel
Can we
leap.
talk about that for one
Yes,
second?
please.
How
Clearly
the
I want
massive
to.
vehicles, how the rovers are armed with Gatling guns.
Yeah, I had a note about that.
Did they think they were gonna be alien resistance on the asteroid, or what was the? I'm sorry, I know there's a lot of that kind of stuff in this movie, but that was a big one.
Yeah, and just disclaimer, I'm not going to dock this movie for. It's not a science fiction film, even though it takes place in space and all that. It's an action movie, so I'm not going to look at it through science fiction lens. And yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff, but a Gatling gun on the front of a rover makes no sense. Well, it does make sense because Michael Bay made this movie. That's how it makes sense.
And it's amazing how he worked in back both Gatling guns, right? Didn't he work? I mean, at least the Gatling gun twice. Was it on the same rover?
Two different Gatling guns.
Yeah, it was
Two
the
different
turret.
Gatling
It was the
guns.
mechanical
There were
turret from.
Multiple Gatling guns,
Yeah.
guns on this mission.
Yeah, and a pistol.
Yep, and a
for
pistol.
good measure.
Yeah, well, that was all after he says, "What are you doing with a gun in space?" And they all had guns mounted to the front of their rovers. So it's
That's
funny
another
that,
good point.
that he's
Yes.
alarmed, but that there's a handgun, but they have guns on their actual cars they're driving around. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think and there was a line Ben Affleck, AJ, I guess I'll use his name. AJ says, right when they're flying away and they're, should we turn back and hit the button? He's not going to do it. He's not going to make it. And he says, Harry does not know how to fail. I don't really see him having succeeded on anything in life. Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. And he fails the dig. He cannot do the dig. Blows all the trannies and all the rods, and he's done. Everyone's going to die. Ben Affleck comes with the other one, digs down, tries to sacrifice himself. So I just want to reiterate that
It's a team.
that is
It's
not
a-
earned.
It's
That
a team
line
effort.
is
It's a
not
team
earned.
effort. Come on now.
He succeeded. He succeeded on accepting that his daughter had become a woman,
And that's the strongest part of the movie for me is his character arc.
and it's the only character arc.
I think
Is there
AJ
another
has
one?
somewhat of a character arc too.
It is I could see that.
I
But
think
not a very profound one.
Not very profound. It's subtle, but I think at the beginning of the movie, he just, he's clearly going behind Harry's back with his daughter. He's just he's kind of skeezy a little bit. He's kind of a maverick with, I'm kind of doing things without asking. And I
But
feel
he
like
does that in the final scene again.
Well, but I feel like in the final scene, you're right, but I feel like he has a different demeanor about it. He sort of respectfully says, "Harry, you've got to
you're
trust
right.
me."
Right. That's true.
And I feel like in the beginning of the movie, he wouldn't have gone, "Harry, you've got to trust me about this oil." He just did the dig and disobeyed. So slight character arc from him.
I think that's fair. I think that's true. Yeah.
Any other character arcs, Grizz?
I'm shocked you guys pulled that out. So I'm very impressed by both of those.
We tried really hard.
That was very well done.
No, but but Harry definitely has a very strong one.
Yeah, I think Harry was the best one. I mean, it's funny that we talk about Bruce Willis in a way that he was such a good actor in that time, and he had some really great roles, and then he had some just classic, just action roles. So he phoned this film in because it was part of his contract to do a few films for, I can't remember who it was, Disney, or I think it was Disney that owned a lot of these. But he was supposed to be paid at the time $20 million a film, and they pushed him down to $3 million because he was such a pain in the ass on the last film, and they snuck him in for low pay. And I think it shows in his character, but he definitely had the best arc. So
I think you might be right. I didn't even realize that he didn't really do a lot of acting in this movie.
Nothing. It was very quiet.
Didn't do a lot
chill.
of physical acting or, there's a lot of shouting and like strong emotions in this movie, and none of it really came from him.
No, none of it.
I did not even notice that till you just brought that up.
I don't know. I can't tell if it was because AJ was so over the top and so screamy and yelly and emotional and all that stuff that he had to play the opposite side of that. But I highly doubt he was trying to be that smart with it. So,
can I ask you guys a real quick aside?
Of course.
Since we're talking about Bruce Willis here, what non-Die Hard movie is your favorite Bruce Willis movie?
Ooh.
Sorry, Nick. I had to say that because I knew that your answer would be Die Hard.
I actually had a quick thought about the last thing we were talking about, though.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Very quickly, but I want to get to that. I was going to say, but what about the scene where he's chasing AJ around with the shotgun?
Yeah.
It's pretty
outrageously unprofessional.
Yeah,
for
he's
an oil
yelling.
rigger.
There's some anger, but
He's hollering.
I think your point is generally taken, though. I think it's still a good point, but I think that is one kind of exception to that. But a good point. Anyways,
yeah, you're right.
Okay, Bruce Willis, best movie. That is not a Die Hard movie.
No, it can be a Die Hard movie. It just can't be Die Hard 1.
Oh, it just can't.
Because to me, that's like the gold standard, and we would all probably answer that. So you can say another Die Hard movie if you want.
Yeah.
I would have not have said Die Hard.
Really?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Unbreakable. Was probably one of my favorite of his.
It's a good movie.
I love it.
I enjoyed it, especially his performance. I liked him in that movie a lot.
Yeah, it was like
he sort of discovers his powers and stuff. I
can't remember if it was before or it had to be after Sixth Sense.
It was.
Right?
It was after the Sixth Sense. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, I gotta probably go Pulp Fiction. I would a close second though. Excuse me. A close second would be. I mean, Die Hard 3. I absolutely love Die Hard 3. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And 2 is great too, but I've 3 has got it's kind of a special place in my heart. But I do have to go with Pulp Fiction.
3 is better than 2.
Yeah,
strongly.
But 2 is still a really good movie that is really underrated, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I'm gonna say The Fifth Element.
Oh, what a great choice!
Yeah,
I love that.
Just edges out Pulp Fiction for me.
Is that on our list?
I forgot.
No,
I wish it could be.
I wish it was because I could watch that movie over
no
and
way.
over.
Anyone who dislikes that movie,
we should, if we catch a movie like this that we all just agree that it's great and it's likely just a reviewed shit, like just crapped all over, then we should have that as part of our watch party nights where we just watch a film. So
yeah, that'd be good.
Let's keep it as a note.
If for some reason Fifth Element did not cross my mind, I don't think it would have changed my answer, but I mean, what a good answer, because I do. That's one of the most watchable movies of all time. We were talking about like, what's that movie you can just, when it's on, you just cannot turn it off. You got to watch it till the end. And The Fifth Element is like near the top of that list.
Totally agree. All right, sorry. Back to
Armageddon. So here's a small thing I wanted to call out. I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on this, but we talked about how the cast is so stacked in this movie. how did they just get that doofus to be the president? They didn't get like some absolute boss. I mean, Colin Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, Deep Impact,
You know,
Morgan Freeman. You know,
right. Well, right.
Big
Yes.
shoes
I guess.
to fill.
I guess that
2
was.
months
I guess
later.
that's
2
why my
months.
mind immediately
That's
went
why
to
he
Morgan
was,
Freeman.
He was busy.
Right. He
making the
was. He
other
was busy
movie.
making the right. You're exactly right. But a very presidential actor. You know, calling someone who that we at least know, not the dad from fucking Drew Carey.
Give me Bill Pullman from Independence Day, man. Give me somebody
and
like
how
that.
whack was that speech that guy gave
Yeah.
compared to Pullman's Independence Day speech?
Nothing touches him in that film, in that moment. Nothing.
One of the best speeches on film. That, King Theoden on Lord of the Rings, William Wallace and Braveheart. Those are like Mount Rushmore of speeches.
Charlie Chaplin, great dictator.
I feel bad for
Shit, I haven't
all
seen that.
president roles after that had to give some glorious speech and that it doesn't come any close. Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. That president could have been, and he had like some melodramatic lines to give. Like somebody could have really
someone could
hammed
have
it up.
owned that. Like, I'll give it to like, Martin Sheen. That
Yeah.
would have been a great choice. You know, there's. I mean, and that was for a movie that was so stacked. How do they not give the president role to someone more notable? I don't know. Small thing, but annoying thing. Okay, let's talk. You know, we always bring up theme, right? Thematics. What's the overriding theme in this film? And I did a lot of thinking about this, and where I landed was I think the theme of this movie is huge steel pipes banging around in various locations.
Man, I was really ready for something like
really
super
set that
poetic.
up and just
Whether it be on a spaceship, in a hangar somewhere, near a pool, there's always a metal rod banging around somewhere. And so to me, that was kind of the overarching theme that tied everything together in this film.
Something's always getting dented or scratched
Or blown up.
or blown up.
As well, yeah, it's all the same.
you
All
got
destruction.
you have to respect Bay's practical effects. I know they did a lot of miniatures in this film, and you could tell in the first opening scenes. And then he used a decent amount of special effects for Michael Bay. I thought, and it was weird because you could immediately tell the difference between the two. But
What's your favorite sequence or favorite effect?
when
Is
the
it practical or
when
visual?
the logo exploded into pieces at the beginning,
Yeah, how dope was that?
that was
Seriously.
fucking awesome.
I gotta say, the beginning of the movie, like the first, I don't know, 3 minutes or whatever, the whole visualization of all that, it's classic, man. That's just really, really well done. What a way to in the music. Trevor Rabin's score is just like
Oh, it's
like
so
overly
good.
melodramatic.
It's really good.
And yeah, now I'm realizing Charlton Heston's voice is the voiceover. That's just a
I didn't even know that. That's incredible.
great sequence.
And think about, just so perfect for this film, how much shit blows up in that first 5 minutes, right? You've got the dinosaur meteor, blowing up, of course. You've got the space station blowing up from the asteroid debris. And then you've got, New York blowing up and much of the rest of the world. Like, just shit is just blowing up 5 minutes out the gate.
Remember, this was in the era where everyone was enamored with not only end of world but like disaster stuff. I mean, you had like Dante's Peak volcano, you had Twister, you had like
94 to 99 was just absolutely packed with films of just end of the world. And I think that's why they completely stopped mid early 2000s, something like that.
Godzilla.
yeah.
And I ate this stuff up as a teenager.
Absolutely.
Like if a movie had a scene where a city got destroyed, Independence Day, which is the gold standard, I think, of disaster movies, I was there. And with Armageddon, they hit me with that straight in the beginning with Eddie Griffin and all this stuff in New York. There's some stuff that doesn't quite hold up. I'm not knocking the movie though for it because it was better than Twilight, which was a decade later. But I will say my favorite single visual sequence, the way it was shot. I'm a really big fan of practical camera work. So like, think Pacific Rim versus Pacific Rim 2. Pacific Rim 1, it's very much the camera is always in a place where a human would realistically be, and it's never flying through like a drone. I'm kind of a fan of that. I think unrealistic camera movements have their time and place, like in a Star Wars movie or something. But when it's on Earth and we're here and we're grounded, I like a realistic camera. And there's a great vantage point camera work in the beginning in New York when all the stuff's blowing up. It's right before Grand Central Station or Penn Station or whichever one it is blows up. There's a meteor that's coming through and you're like standing on the street looking up. And it comes through and it smashes through 2 buildings into a third building, and it cuts a hole in these 2 buildings, and the camera sort of tilt pans that's a really, really good scene. Like, and it holds up in today's visual effects. So.
I have to admit, the cinematography was actually like the shots that he created with this were actually very interesting. And I mean, it keeps your attention the entire film. He's constantly cutting and constantly shooting around. But when he does take the time and you see like the mission room and stuff like the big tables and all the people around discussing, like the shots he does through that, and like how he's coming down over the table around the people, and then them running through the meteorite, like or the asteroid at the end, like just constantly seeing things in frame as the characters are moving. It was really impressive. With
good
a lot
atmosphere.
Of the shots. Yeah.
Good production design. Good atmosphere.
Yeah.
One thing I think is kind of interesting about this movie that I think plays into a little bit why audiences really like this movie is there's so many characters, right? So much exposition to do with all of these. You get to know this entire crew and some of the people sort of on the periphery. So the amount of kind of like setup and exposition, and I would say, so you know, I've read a couple of screenwriting books in my day, and you know, one that is pretty well known called Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. Talks about screenplay structure, and there's a section of the screenplay that's called the fun and games section of the screenplay, and it usually comes in, you know, maybe about a third of the way through the movie, and it's really when you're starting to pay off the promise of the premise, right? Where you've got some big crazy thing that's, you know, in this case it's an asteroid barreling towards Earth that needs to be solved, and then now you've got this team that you need to train up and, you know, and get to know. And I think this movie spends so much time doing that, right? That it's, you know, it's really fun, but it's also kind of unusual in how much time it spends doing that. And I think for some people, especially a critic, that might really drag. And even though for audiences, I think it's a lot of fun.
I never realized that. That kind of has a name to it, the fun and games section, because I've talked to my wife about this before. I feel like I love act ones of movies. I almost like any movie in act one, and then by act two it either loses me, or then act three is always like, come on, you know. I love act one, act two. So now I'm realizing maybe why. It's because the structure sort of, it's just like the easiest and the most accessible, I guess. So that's interesting to hear.
Is this one of the best opening, like the first acts of a film, especially like an actual genre into the world kind of thing?
No, I don't think so.
I'm
not going to say this is the best at anything.
I thought it was. I thought it did a really good job of like keeping your attention and like drawing you in, and you were very invested in a lot of these characters. Shit, how many characters are in this movie? 40 that we're trying to pay attention to, and I feel like I was like, oh yeah, I totally root for that guy or Bear or, you know, who are AJ, all of them.
That's one of the things I detract from the movie was I totally see what you're saying, but I feel like it was too much. It's like I was getting fatigued. It's like, slow down, and give me a breather. There's only one scene in this movie where, you know, they're the animal cracker thing, which great Australian accent by Ben Affleck, by the way. That's like the only scene in the movie where you can like, you know, the rest of the movie is just like, all right, this is like, oh my gosh, it's called dynamics, you know, and the more dynamics you have, the bigger the highs hit and the lower the lows hit. And when it's all turned up to 11, like that was one of my problems with Bad Boys 2. And I think Bad Boys 2 was much worse of a film than this. But I think that was a little too much for me. I
would agree. I don't think I saw it until probably late second act, early third act, when people started dying and you're like, all right, I have no idea who just passed away. They even showed them on camera and I'm like, I have no idea who that was. And so it wasn't until then, but that buildup of just getting the team together, them like showing you what's going on. There's like multiple places. I think they hit Tokyo and New York both in the opening scene where they showed like the meteorites throughout the movie destroying cities.
Yeah, they hit you with New York first.
Yeah.
Then they hit you with was it Shanghai or somewhere?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And then later in the film they had the whole Paris montage where that gets blown up. Yeah, and I'll say this about that. I did love the setup of the ensemble cast. I am a sucker for Ocean's 11 style. Here's all of the archetype people, right? This one just set that crew up. You know, obviously it was just like completely absurd, but it was very enjoyable. Yeah, and that was part of the fun and games.
I fit that within the first act, at least in this film. So that's why I love it so much, because they had so many guys that were all lovable. You thought you could, you know, your best friend was there with you. It's just interesting. I thought it was great. But
this is Critical Mess. We're talking Armageddon. We're drinking Basil Hayden. And I think the next thing we should talk about is maybe what scene in this film was the worst scene in this movie? Which scene single-handedly brought this film down at least a few points? And I can start. And
let me look at my notes.
I think, Brian, I think you touched on it. It's not really a single scene, but a series of scenes. I think any of that stuff with Affleck and Liv Tyler was virtually impossible to watch.
They didn't have very much chemistry.
So cringy. And that animal cracker scene, good gravy. I was struggling with that. I was kind of like, I was gripping my couch cushions real tight on that scene.
Were you flipping your butterfly knives like crazy?
It was unpleasant. I was uncomfortable. And like the jet plane, singing the jet plane song on when they're about to jump on the rocket. I mean, I get what they're trying to do there, but God, that shit was rough.
5 years ago, I never would have thought future Brian would say this, but if you're gonna show the animal cracker scene, like, can I get a little more skin
from Ben Affleck?
Can I say that in 2023?
From Ben Affleck?
From Ben Affleck, yes.
Yeah. Okay, just wanted to clarify.
I thought you were talking about the animal cracker.
No.
I mean, come on. Like, if you're going to show a sensual scene, like, let's give me something.
So it's either the animal cracker scene or, ironically, another AJ and his counterpart, whatever. But it was the scene where he's just kissing all over her in the hangar, and then her dad's just sitting there watching.
I have a note about the creep factor on that
just
scene.
Yeah, there were a lot of creepers in this film, but
well, to that point, early on, Steve Buscemi just straight up admitted to being a pedophile early in the film, which,
yeah, right on the oil rig. He's like, I hope he was over.
He was like, she never told me her age.
Yeah,
because he thought that the feds were there for him. Like, it was like, gee, I mean, okay. I mean, I guess they're developing his character, but
I'm just gonna say one thing about that character, Michael Bay. Enough. That's enough with Hound Dog. Good Lord.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. I mean, I read an interview with Buscemi about how, like, later he talked about this role, and he was like, it was at the point in his career he was typecast to that specific character, and he was so tired of it. And then he was told that it was a different role, and then they did more rewrites during filming.
I liked the character. I thought it was really interesting how he went crazy at the end. I thought that was a very interesting component.
It was fantastic.
But he doesn't have to say something about Helga's House of Pain or whatever it is every single scene.
Yeah. They were laying it on pretty thick.
As far as a specific scene that I hated, I don't think I have. I didn't hate the animal cracker scene. Like I said, I wanted more from it. I think what really specific element that I could not stand the most in this movie, and I wrote it down. It was earlier on. I've never seen so many interruptions in a movie before. So many, one character interrupts another character. It's my blood pressure started to get, like, because I don't like interruptions in real life. I've trained up my kids to never interrupt me, and there's a reason for that. But this got to the point where it felt weird if someone completed a sentence, got a thought out. First half of the movie was more atrocious than the second half, but I think that was the biggest thing for me. It's like, stop interrupting somebody because you're either mad at them or because you need to explain it to the audience in a dumber way. Like, somebody that's, let's have somebody that's had less caffeine explain this. Big rocket hit meteor. Like, it was over and over and over. It's like, how dumb is your audience? And actually, they were dumb because I was 16. I needed that back then. So
sure.
Interruptions, that's mine.
All right.
Hang on, can I just interrupt you for?
Yeah. No, please. I'm very polite.
Classic Brian.
Gosh, so okay, I want to jump back to one thing real quick because I'm just looking at my notes here, and we were talking about character arcs, and actually, I do believe there's a character who had a pretty big arc who we didn't talk about, and I think it was a legitimate arc.
Was it Billy Bob Thornton?
No.
Was it the Russian space guy?
No.
Was it Will Patton?
No. It was William Fichtner's character.
Oh, I liked him.
Fichtner.
Yeah,
I liked him a lot.
He did a whole "You're the worst mistake NASA's ever made." To then,
I want to shake the hand.
Exactly. I want to shake the hand.
All right, I'll give you that.
Nicely done.
That's
Nicely
really
done.
nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Comes all the way around. Yep. Yeah. So anyway, just wanted to not that saves the movie or anything, but
Well, no,
There was an
it's-
arc, damn it. There was an arc.
I'm gonna raise mine up to a 93. Thank you.
Whoa.
No, just for that one character arc.
All right, you guys want to do a little rapid fire?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, I've got a nice little stash of rapid fire questions here or topics. So the first one, and we're just going just reactions, right? So one thing I thought was notable, I thought was rather funny, it gave me a good chuckle, was early in the film. Remember the amateur, what's the term? Telescope guy, astrologer,
God.
not astrologer,
Get my
astronomer. Damn it!
Out of the 8
What's wrong with
satellites
my
in the
brain?
world, they controlled 7, and he had this random guy had
Well, yeah,
the last
of course,
one.
that
Yeah.
random.
Can we name it after my
amateur-
wife, Dottie?
Yes,
She's
great,
a vicious, cold
great,
bitch of
great.
which there's no escape.
hilarious line. I thought that was maybe the funniest line in the movie, or one of them.
It was up there. I'm going to say Owen Wilson when he's talking about Liv Tyler. Just wanting, she's exploring her body. That scene,
I wanted him to be going for like another 30 seconds there. They
I
just
guffawed on that scene.
great scene. Yeah.
And then he's got another quote that I constantly quote is the whole thing about being 98% excited, 2% scared, or maybe it's the other way around. Classic.
yeah, Owen Wilson got axed pretty early in this one.
I was sad to see him go.
Yeah, I guess that was kind of before his star power would have prevented that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of those deaths where I was confused as to which blonde guy in the shuttle was the death scene.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I recently I watched it again, I was like, oh, that was Owen Wilson.
While we're talking quotes from the movie, one I pulled here from our boy Keith David. Looks like a bunch of retards I wouldn't trust with a potato gun.
When I heard the word retard, I went, "Oh!"
I know, didn't we all
shit.
take on retard?
We used to
You
just say
can't-
that
You
word.
can't drop the hard R
Nope.
on just anymore.
But
It's just not-
but the way he delivers that line is exactly the character he plays with Rick and Morty. And despite him dropping the R word, it was a funny the potato gun. I don't know. It's just that's a funny line to me.
it was funny. It made me chuckle. But yes, times have changed.
Times have
changed on that word for sure. I thought it was funny how, I thought it was a great introduction to Bruce Willis's character on the oil rig, which I will also say was just, this movie had a lot of just cool sets, right?
That was
And
a
the oil
real
rig-
that was a real oil rig.
Oh yeah, you could
Yeah.
tell it looked
was the best.
very real. It was a cool set, and it was just a cool place to spend whatever 10 minutes, and sort of Bruce Willis's introduction. He's just like whacking golf balls at the Greenpeace boat. I mean, that was that told us so much about his character in just 2 seconds, and that's what a great movie does. So that really stuck out to me. Okay, here's rapid fire. One of the shuttle pilots was named Gruber. Coincidence?
Coincidence from what?
Mac Gruber, right?
Hans Gruber?
Hans
Oh,
Gruber?
Hans Gruber.
Oh,
Hans
shoot.
Gruber? Bruce Willis's big movie, number one
Yeah.
villain.
Maybe.
He's in a movie together with Gruber. No one thought of that.
Not even once. Nice catch.
Not like you guys,
Nice
but like
catch.
no one on the set, like the
Interesting.
screenwriter. Was that just a pure coincidence?
Because that is not a common name.
It is not a common name.
Well, they made the Pulp Fiction joke, and they had 2 Bruce Willis. Did you guys catch that? Or maybe it was Buscemi?
Oh, they did. They did
Yeah,
reference
yeah,
Pulp
they-
Fiction.
yeah.
They did reference Pulp Fiction. That was kind of interesting because that was a pretty contemporary movie.
Yeah,
it was
it had
only
only
a
come
few
out.
years before that.
And I know this is rapid fire. I got to say something about Gruber. Okay.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, but this is this touches on. I know we're not flipping the script yet, or maybe we're not. But
This is a tough one to flip the script
yeah,
on
because we're
on
all just
60s.
barely flipping. So
Yeah,
let's. I'm
right.
just gonna say this. One of the biggest problems with this movie is it just kind of takes us to a place. Well, it doesn't take us to a place. We just arrive at a place that's unearned. Okay. So I think that there's this whole scene at the end when Bruce Willis is magically on the screens for everyone to see and his daughter to see, and it's like, okay, whatever, it's a movie, and it's so dramatic how he's giving this speech, and he's going to sacrifice his life, and baby, I'll always be there with you. I'll come check in on you. Just the whole it's the end of a huge blockbuster movie, and you got to feel sad about somebody sacrificing their lives, right? And I feel like it's not just her. Everyone's listening into this speech. Everyone's on board. The movie stops and breathes and it's like, this is a profound death, right? Right before that, Gruber dies, also sacrificing himself to save the world, okay? Now, we care more about Bruce Willis because we've been watching a movie about him, not Gruber. But in the real world, Gruber is a freaking elite, the best that NASA has to offer astronauts to go up on this mission and save the world versus this dude who's just an oil driller. Why does everyone care about the dude who's an oil driller over this fucking American hero?
This is America. We have to root for the underdog.
And because if this movie tried to develop another character, the film would have literally exploded.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Just don't kill Gruber then, okay? Let him live.
Yeah.
That's
they
all
should
I
have.
ask.
I agree. They should.
That's
have
how
just let
you-
him
that's
live.
how you
They
work your
let
way out of that.
What was the woman pilot's name? They let her live.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. Michael Bay, of course, lets the
They had to-
attractive young lady
They had to let
survive.
the hot chick.
You got to give credit
shocker.
to the NASA PR team, though, for getting that video all over the globe to pull at the
I
heartstrings.
don't know how they did that. So, okay, yeah, let's go back to rapid fire. You mentioned Gruber, and I wanted to make sure I mentioned how I take huge exception to how they treat the deaths in this movie. Unearned melodrama for Bruce Willis. What you got next?
Affleck. I want to talk Affleck. He offended me in a lot of scenes in this film. And I just have, and I was talking with someone about this earlier today. And I just kind of made the statement that I just don't like Ben Affleck. And it's not personal. I think, and here's the thing. The person asked me, why? Why do you not like Ben Affleck? And I didn't really have a great answer, unfortunately, because he's been in some movies I like. He's been in a lot of movies I really didn't like, and I think that's probably a big part of it is I associate him with some really bad movies. Like the first one that comes to mind is Pearl Harbor. I mean, Michael Bay, shout out.
Terrible movie.
One of the worst fucking movies I've ever seen.
Huge disappointment.
In my life. It was bad. But he's in a lot of other really bad movies.
What's the Jennifer Lopez movie he's in?
Oh, Giggly?
Yeah, isn't that like one of the worst reviewed
Geely?
movies of all time or something? Yeah.
I believe it's pronounced Giggly.
Geely? Is that what it is? Yeah. Giggly?
Yes, but that
Okay,
was
got it.
like widely acclaimed. It's like that,
You're
and
the-
what was the other one that right around that same time that was like the Swept Away? Remember with Madonna, directed by Guy Ritchie? Those two movies were like the 0%.
Oh, gosh.
You know,
Do you think it was just because he was a whiny little bitch character this entire film, just always like trying to squirrel his way out of whatever situation he got himself
I think part of
into?
it was his. I think part of it is just you don't like Ben Affleck. I'm very neutral on him. I don't like him. I don't hate him.
maybe it's the back tattoo. Have you guys seen this guy's back tattoo?
No.
Oh yeah, the
Actually, a weird part of me
historic, yeah.
respects the shit out of that. 'cause
Oh,
he
it's
went
insane.
he went full send on that tattoo, but it's
Oh,
not a great
yeah, it was not a
tattoo.
mistake or anything.
But-
It's
Yeah,
full
it's like a
back,
pheanix. It's like
top
it's,
to bottom. Full,
It's a,
yeah,
it's a little
phoenix
much. but
rising
good-
out
you
of
know,
the
good
ashes.
on him.
Yes.
But more of it, Grizz, though, is that he is kind of a skeezy guy, you know. But I came to really like him when it was. I love how they set up him, Bear, and the Russian cosmonaut guy on that little side quest to make it back. I liked that little tandem of three dudes.
Fun
It was
personalities.
Fun. I started to like Ben Affleck at that point, and by the time he comes back, he's kind of completed that arc. He's a little bit more like in it to win it. I don't know, but
Here's a real, you called him skeezy, and here's a real subtle nod to his skeeziness that I wonder if it was intentional or not, but I took it that way. Okay, so he works on an offshore oil rig. I get he's a young guy, but he's making a lot of money, right? Like he's making six figures. Like even in the 90s, he's making six figures. Like he was also in like a, kind of a leadership position.
you talking about Ben Affleck, or are you talking about the AJ?
Sorry, I'm talking about I'm talking about
Oh,
AJ.
okay.
Yes. Like AJ in this film, you can presume as an oil driller working offshore has a six-figure job in the 90s, almost
For that kind of hazardous job that takes you in that kind of conditions, yeah, he's probably making bank.
He's probably making bank. Did you see that tiny baby little ring that he gave, that engagement ring that he gave old girl? It
I
was like
missed
the
it.
teeniest tiny little pebble. It was like you couldn't even see. It was the most pathetic engagement ring. And it would have been very endearing and sweet if he was a fucking grocery bagger, but he's not. He's an offshore oil driller making $250K a year, and he buys
Yeah,
his
but he went
girl-
off on his own, so he didn't quite have the money maybe that he was getting with the previous job he had.
But I'm sorry, if you're making like $250,000 a year, you find a way to dig up, $10K for a decent sized rock, man. I mean, that thing was pathetic. Plus, don't you want to impress, Harry, right?
Yeah, Harry's daughter and Harry.
You get
yeah.
her this whack. So that was just a really small, subtle thing, but makes him a little skeezy. Is there anything Michael Bay loves to film more than a strip club?
Nope.
Yeah, I mean, he leans into the stereotypes.
But if it's a racist character in a strip club, that's the holy grail.
Oh yeah, right. That it is. Yeah. So I could feel his glee in the strip club scene in this film, like almost like it was obligatory at that point. He had to get a strip club scene in there, and
he still does it today. It's
yeah,
2023.
he's always working in the strip club. So
Yeah.
I just,
I loved the bouncer guy who tells them they're getting too much action and they get in a fight and they all go out and get arrested and Steve Buscemi's like, we're astronauts, and he's like, yeah, we're astronauts. I loved that he got
Yeah.
that line.
Mhm.
Good for him.
yeah, there were some good one-liners in this movie.
Yeah.
Some nice payoffs.
How about this one? Here's
Yeah.
a quote. Here's a quote
Uh-huh.
said by one of the NASA stooges. Sir, the override. It's been overridden. Thoughts?
Good line.
Was it said just like that? There was no explosion in between those two lines?
No, it was, sir, the override. It's been overridden. It was literally said like that. It was at the end where, they're going back and forth with the power struggle.
Oh,
and
yeah.
With zero irony.
Zero irony.
Yeah.
Full earnestness. And another one that these are just the only two quotes I jotted down. That was one. Here's the other. This is an exchange between William Fichtner. I don't remember his name.
I can't think of it either.
Sharp or something like that, or Jag. It was something with some edge to it. It's him and Steve Buscemi. Steve Buscemi. Captain America here blew the landing by 26 miles. How the hell do you know that? Delivered with complete unironic tone. Because I'm a genius.
I had the exact same quote, and it was my favorite of the film. That line, the whole series of conversation, it was fucking awesome.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, he doesn't say like, because I'm a genius. He doesn't say it like that. He goes, because I'm a genius. Full stop. And I'm just like, this movie just did that.
Yeah. It did take
Holy
itself
shit.
it was weird that I felt like this movie took itself very seriously. As goofball as some of these lines were, they just fit those oil riggers as bumbling crazies that work in this crazy industry. But I don't know. I just thought it was very serious.
I would say the tone is one of the things this film got right.
Yeah,
I say
weirdly.
they danced the line on great tone.
Yes.
Because it was serious but funny.
Agree. So I brought this up earlier quickly, but I want to bring it up again because I think it's notable. And that's just the thought that kind of the idea that have the odds ever been this slim so many times over and over and over and over again in a movie before? The way they just, like Grizz, you brought up earlier, like just something bad continues to happen, and that's what happens in a good screenplay. It gets worse.
Yeah, the buildup
it gets worse,
was
it gets
just
worse.
insane. Yeah.
But in this movie, it took that to a different level, I feel like. And they were just doing things that were so fucking improbable over and over and over again. It was just so, and I think it kind of all culminated with the rover, like jumping the canyon on the asteroid, which, by the way, did you guys notice that the asteroid literally like fucking growled? Like when they got,
I had a note.
Those
it
had to
literally
be-
growled, like it sounded like a tiger.
They did that several times.
They did it several
Yep.
times. That was interesting.
Like 5 or 6 times that asteroid growled, and I was like, wow, geez, could you lay it on any thicker?
Those were fantastic tiger sound effects. It was perfect.
I can't think of one, Nick. I think this movie is it. This is the preeminent,
The slimmest odds.
slimmest
Yeah.
odds ever.
And maybe almost the biggest stakes. It's hard to make the stakes higher than complete world explosion end of humanity.
Space travel is hard, guys.
It's almost like this was Michael Bay's magnum opus, but then he made 40 more movies.
Is this peak Michael Bay?
I would say this is right before peak Michael Bay. I would say peak Michael Bay's Transformers.
Oh, really? That late?
I don't know that I disagree with that. I guess how are we talking peak?
I'm
though?
going, like,
Peak is in
chronologically.
like his best film.
Well,
Like-
The Rock is his best film.
oh yeah, gosh dang it.
Yeah, it
Good
probably
call.
is. Bad Boys is way up there for me, but not two.
Bad Boys 1
One
is a good movie.
is a
yes.
great movie, but I think I agree with you. I think The Rock is his best movie. I can get
Yeah,
behind
true.
that.
Good call. Good call on that one.
I can get behind
Yeah.
that.
I need to rewatch
Which was
The Island.
before this, correct?
Yeah.
Yes,
it was.
Okay.
Yep.
I got to rewatch that film.
The Rock and Armageddon are weirdly sort of similar movies. Things are always, there's no way we're gonna rise above these odds. Ensemble cast. Talk about another ensemble cast. The Rock is up there. It's not quite as much as Armageddon, but there's banger after banger in that movie, and kind of a similar sort of long, just like similar tone. But I think a better
I thought it
movie.
was funny. Like The Rock was way goofy, way goofier than this. I think.
Well, because of Nick Cage.
Yeah, I think that might be why.
But I think it was just a little more grounded.
Yeah.
A better screen. I'm gonna chalk it up to the screenplay. I think better screenplay for the Rock. So
You're listening to Critical Mess. We're talking Armageddon with Brian and Grizz. And the next thing I want to get to in our rapid fire segment is this film is rated PG-13, right? That means you get 1, maybe 2 F-bombs.
and Billy Bob Thornton was the one to deliver the F-bomb, and he dropped it to perfection.
Okay, that was going to be my question. Was that the appropriate F-bomb drop? And you say yes.
I couldn't even focus on swear words, guys. There was way too much going on in this
You didn't
film.
notice the F word?
Didn't even notice it.
The line was...
Maybe I say it more than you, though. So
He was sort of defending Liv Tyler, and he turns around and shouts it at
Keith David.
Keith David. Okay, so what does he say?
He says, "That's an order you shouldn't follow, and you fucking know it."
Oh, yeah.
Really
yeah, great
good.
line.
That
Okay.
that line had punch to it.
It did. It did indeed.
You fucking knew it.
I thought, just looking back at quotes here, another one I had written down was, I don't remember who said it. It was, gosh, who was it?
This is insane. He's got
Oh,
space dementia.
It was
Space dementia.
It was Will Patton. Will Patton, I believe, said this line. And it was towards the end of the film. And he says, "This is turning into a surrealistic nightmare." And that's when the bomb arms itself. And I was like, really, guy? Like, it took you all this stuff to get you to surrealistic nightmare. It wasn't when you heard that there was a 6-mile wide asteroid barreling towards Earth. It wasn't when you heard that you were going to be on the ship flying onto the asteroid to blow it up. It's when it took you all the way to this point, to the nuclear bomb being armed by what he assumed was accident, I guess, to call it a surrealistic nightmare. And I thought, man, it takes a lot to get that guy there.
Well, and I think the reason that's in there is because, once again, they're trying to tell us how we should be feeling as an audience, unfortunately, at that moment.
Sure, and you're right. I think it's probably as simple as that. But I just thought that line felt so out of place to me. It felt like an hour and a half too late. So
there's a movie that does that so well, where it's actually, I think it's The Moon is actually getting closer. It's not Moon by Roland Emmerich or Moonfall or whatever it is. Moon is
I've not seen that one yet.
Duncan Jones, great movie. There's another movie where the moon is coming towards the planet, and it actually, this movie, spoilers, results in the destruction of all humanity. And no one ever says a line like that, but it fills me with so much existential dread, and this movie has stuck with me longer than most other movies have. It's called Melancholia.
I know about this movie.
It's a Lars von Trier movie, not nearly as fucked up as most of his movies are. Really, really, really good movie. Slow burn, but boy, does it fill you with dread.
When did that come out?
2011 or 12, maybe.
Okay, I watched it, but it was
you?
probably like a year after it came out. I don't remember it that well, but I do remember it being like affecting.
If you say, yeah, it was very affecting. And if you watched it and said I hated that movie, I would totally get it. Like, because I kind of hate it, but I
didn't hate it.
I rated it really high.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I made it like I don't remember it very well, but I remember it had an emotional impact.
Well, it's just a
for
great
sure.
example of how character or actors actually have to act. Like, it's like the screenplay says you feel like it's a surrealistic nightmare, so act that emotion rather than say that line. And in a Michael Bay movie, you have somebody say the line. In a Lars von Trier movie, you have somebody express that with their facial expressions and body movements. So anyway,
Yeah,
just
it's Michael
a little
Bay
dichotomy.
saying, "I'll show it in action form with an explosion in between."
There were a couple of exchanges in this movie that I thought were like supposed to be kind of at the very heightened emotional exchanges that really I couldn't help myself, but I kind of burst into laughter with both of them. They're both toward the end. They both involve Bruce Willis. The first one was him talking with Fitchner's character, kind of right after they have the blow up with the gun, right?
He talks him into changing his mind.
Exactly, right. And he's screaming, "I have never, ever missed a depth." And Fitchner is just almost in tears. "You swear on your daughter's life you will hit 800 feet.
And then he says, "I swear to God."
He goes, "I swear to God."
Yeah.
It was just like, I just couldn't help myself. It was, I don't know if it was good or bad. It was something.
It could have been a lot worse.
It could have been worse. I agree.
Given that dialogue, it could have been worse. Let's be honest.
Houston, you have a problem. See, I promised my daughter I was coming home. I don't know what you people are doing down there, but we got a hole to dig up here. So,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah. I like that last one.
The other one,
No, they're bad. You're right.
Yeah. They're bad.
The other one that was kind of a really emotional exchange that I just couldn't help myself was in the very end with Bruce Willis and Affleck, that final scene, which is interesting because I hadn't seen this movie in a long time, but I remembered that scene like really, really well.
That was
like,
burned into
almost
my memory.
word for word,
Yeah.
like burned into my memory.
I don't know why.
I don't know either.
Yeah, same.
But I couldn't, forget that scene. But the way he's just like screaming, "I love you," and just like pleading, it's just like, I get what he's just overdoing it, and it's just kind of hard to watch for me.
I almost had to go back and rewind. Ben Affleck screams "I love you" to Bruce Willis in this movie.
He
Yes.
screams, "I love you." I
He
feel like that's
screams
why
"I love you" to Bruce Willis.
I thought
feel-
that was amazing. It was so funny. I laughed out loud.
It was
Sitting
so
there.
funny.
It
It
kind of
was so-
worked.
Oh, it was.
But how the
yeah.
hell did they get away with that?
I feel like this is why Affleck became an alcoholic, because he had to tell he loved
You had
him.
to read these lines.
Yeah, that was. But I had a hard
the
time.
swelling of the music and the swelling of the
It was-
stakes,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it actually worked.
Well, especially for like a teenager, sitting in the theater. I mean, it's gonna hit. It's gonna hit. But as but almost 40-year-old sitting on the couch in 2023, it's a little funny.
Can we talk quickly about the soundtrack to this? Like between like the infamous like just ballads, like the insane ballad songs with Aerosmith, all the way to the orchestra that plays during dramatic times. Like I thought that was really well done.
Well, the
especially
music
in that scene.
There is music playing every second of this movie, which is a little bit like, okay,
Mhm.
sometimes things can be more like, think Jurassic Park when the T-Rex breaks out of the paddock. No music in that entire scene, but Jurassic Park is known for its soundtrack. It shows a composer composing himself and restraining himself, right? Trevor Rabin was told by Michael Bay, I need you to channel your inner Hans Zimmer, who gave us the Rock soundtrack, great soundtrack. Channel that. You didn't know that?
I didn't even know that.
Oh,
what?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh my-
Hans
I gotta
Zimmer.
watch the Rock.
Let's just
tonight.
all go home and watch The Rock.
I'm gonna
tonight.
watch
we
the
I
should.
think
Rock.
that's a great
We should.
idea.
I'm gonna watch
Let's
it
just
right
do
after
that for
the-
our mental health.
Couple of
Yeah.
early Hans Zimmer bangers were Crimson Tide and The Rock. But anyway, and then so Hans Zimmer moves on to other things, and Michael Bay goes, I need you to channel Hans Zimmer, and I need you to turn it up to 11 and just blow us out of the water with music. A little too much for me. But yeah, but I do, like, matter of fact, I've got the track called The Launch on my like film scores playlist on Spotify that I listen to quite frequently. So yeah.
How about that nuke? That was one sexy nuke. It looked like a brand new DeLorean.
Did look like a DeLorean.
Yeah, I think it was hot.
Yeah, I want me one of those.
For the basement. Yeah, just to put right next to the
Put
TV.
it down by my pinball machines.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just real quick going back to you were talking about that scene at the end where 16-year-old Nick or 15-year-old Nick, 40-year-old Nick is a little bit different. So another scene for that was the dad and the son, the estranged father, the absentee father. I remember loving that character. I liked the guy who
was Will
played
Patton.
him. Well, Will Patton, one of my favorite actors in this movie, or not actors, but performances in this movie. But with him with the son, and the wife, that relationship always like tore me up, especially at the very end when they kind of reconcile and the music plays. Like I would always get that was kind of probably the moment of the movie where I maybe almost shed a tear as a young lad. This time watching it, I couldn't believe how unearned that was. I mean, you've got this dad who clearly isn't with his wife and he doesn't know his son barely, and now like they're reconciled because he goes on a spaceship and is famous now.
Yeah, mommy
So,
the salesman's on the TV.
Well,
Yeah,
Mom
that's
likes
a
that
little-
money.
Little cringe,
So-
yeah. But so this time it hit on a way more superficial level than it hit me when I was
Yeah.
15. So I just wanted to come back to that because that was something where I think the music, when you go back and watch that scene where he sees his son come out from behind the car, and they hit you with that like violin sort of riff.
Yeah, that slow-mo
Yeah.
running. Yeah.
You're just like, oh, hit me in the feels.
So, one thing I think we got to bring up, this was such a minor point in the movie, but had such major implications, was towards the end of the film where they're trying to escape the asteroid, right? And Peter Stormare, the crazy Russian, they're having a difficulty. I don't remember, it was with one of the engines or something like that, and the woman pilot and him go down kind of to fix it, and they're panicking and they can't figure out how to fix it, and he kind of shoves her out of the way, and he's kind of like, this is how we do it in Russia, and just like beats the shit out of this metal box.
Yeah.
So
He's like,
literally
"Yes!"
just beating a metal box with a wrench literally saved all of their lives.
Well, you said the theme was metal rods hitting things.
What?
Yeah,
There it is.
okay, see,
Yet
there it is.
again.
Yeah,
Again.
that's pretty good. I mean, did you see his ship when they got to that Russian to fill like the refuel or whatever? It was like beat to shit. There's icicles inside most of the machinery, and oh, it's great.
Nick, you're right. That was an absolutely absurd thing to happen, but because it happens at the 2 hour and 30-minute mark of a movie that's been doing things like that up until that point, we're ready.
And
for
you're
it.
just like fucking fine.
Yep.
Yeah,
Matter of fact,
at this
good.
point, yeah.
An experienced Russian cosmonaut.
Yes.
I did love him. He's
Oh.
just once again just so stereotypical and goofy. But
Isn't he in
he's
Minority
great.
Report? Isn't he the guy, the
Yeah, the
alternative
eyeball.
guy,
Yeah,
the
he's the-
nasty
That's
guy who
right,
sneezes and
yes,
stuff?
with the nasty sandwich in the
Yeah.
refrigerator. Yes.
What a weird scene in that
Yes.
movie.
I mean,
What a-
swapping eyeballs, right? Isn't that what he did?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Swap
his job.
jobs.
I'm sorry, I think that movie is underrated. And
Oh,
is a fantastic.
I just
fucking
revisited
movie.
it, and
I
it
have
holds
it.
up.
I have it on my list to rewatch. So I
It
need
holds
to,
up, man.
Yeah, does it really?
Yeah,
Okay.
it does. It tries
Special
to,
effects too.
it's a little bit the way they shoot it. You'll probably have a lot of thoughts about it, but it's kind of, I want to say like lighting has sort of halos around it. It's kind of got a soft focus to it in a weird way. I think it was intentional, but no, everything holds up. And man, that movie, talk about a movie that has a lot to do and succeeds at doing a lot of things. That's a movie for sure.
Here's another one I had that I just thought was notable. So toward the end of the movie, kind of soon after the asteroid explodes, there's just like in the NASA, command control room, there's just like this voice that pops up, like this voice of God out of nowhere, but he sounds like a 40s announcer voice. And he's like, the two halves are going to miss the Earth by 400 miles, and the small pieces are being vaporized. What the fuck?
Yep.
It's just perfectly
Who's that guy?
explained.
And where the fuck-
What's great is
At
like
least
right before that scene, they show the graphic of the Earth, and the asteroid has to be 1/4 the size of the planet, and you see it break in half, and then it's like maybe a half an inch is the line between like Earth and the actual asteroid. And they're like, I was like, that actually missed the Earth by 400 miles. Like it split after it was that close. I don't know. It was just
Hey,
hilarious.
you know what? That's fine. All the
So
science
good.
in this
I
movie is fine
remember
with me.
seeing that in the movie when I originally saw it, going, "Wait, it missed the Earth!" Like,
Can we just agree that nothing scientifically in this movie even tries to make sense?
would we want to see this in an Interstellar style as a remake? Like,
I am always all for as accurate as possible science in a movie, like
but a
an
remake.
Interstellar.
Yeah, would you see it as a remake though? Not
No,
like
I don't-
as a
I don't do-
fully new story or anything.
I don't do remakes.
Okay, all right.
But yeah, they're like when they're docking with the Russian space station, and these shuttles just come flying in and just like dock with it. I'm just like, this is
Yeah, they seem
feels
to
like
be,
a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, they seem to be flying those things around with great maneuvering.
This is not like accurate stuff. So, and that's okay. Like I said, that's fine. Whatever.
So I realize my rapid fire kind of sucks because I'm not asking questions here. I'm just kind of saying stuff.
It started
But
45
anyways,
minutes
let
ago.
me ask another couple quick questions, which might help facilitate the rapid fire segment. Easy one here. Who was the best character in this movie? Who's your favorite character in this movie? And you got a lot of choices.
It was Owen Wilson until he died. No, it wasn't. I'm gonna say Billy Bob Thornton.
He had some great lines with some punch. I'll give you that. That's a good pick.
I just liked him. I thought he had a lot to do, and he was caught in the middle between a lot of different people, and he was very pivotal, and he had relationships with several of the people in the movie. I mean, he just kind of was a center for the movie.
Chris?
Steven Tyler.
No, absolutely not. No, I got to go with the Russian cosmonaut. He just went to the moon and back. It was so good. Yeah,
I think he was definitely the best kind of sub character.
He did literally go to the moon and back. You realize?
It's also like
Okay.
they put this guy on the fucking space station by himself for 18 months.
Yeah. Is that a record? That's got to be.
It's not a thing. But once again, there's a lot of things that are not a thing in this
None of
movie.
these things are a thing.
But it's just like, that was, okay, just at least try and make it a little realistic. But
Who's
Anyway.
who's your favorite character, Nick?
it's definitely not AJ. But you know what? I'm going to go with Harry. I thought he was a solid protagonist. I like Bruce Willis a lot. Just kind of 90s Bruce Willis and 80s Bruce Willis is just awesome to me. I like most of his movies from that period in time, and this movie's not really an exception. I thought he carried the movie nicely. I thought he did kind of have a somewhat interesting character. He had somewhat, at least a little bit of an evolution. And I thought he just did a good job of, carrying a heavy film.
I'm glad you picked him. It would have been weird if none of the three of us picked one of the main people on the movie poster for this movie. So good
Yeah,
job.
nice work, guys.
So I don't know, guys. What else is there to say about this movie?
I guess we could read we could just go real quick here. We already read some critic reviews.
Yeah,
I think
let's
we
hear
all
some
agree
audience.
it was a very enjoyable movie for after you lose the fact that it was, absolutely insane.
Okay.
Plot.
I'm reading audience reviews. I'm just trying to find the ones that have the highest upvotes. I'll just cold read this. So there's the one with the most upvotes. Bill Knight from 3 years ago, five stars. This movie was great. It is probably the best movie of 1998. Well, no, that's Saving Private Ryan. Michael Bay surely knows how to make a very good movie and not waste any actor's talent in his fine movies. Bruce Willis was great in this film. He delivered an Oscar-worthy performance. And Ben Affleck, Michael Clark Duncan, Steve Buscemi, Peter Stormare, and Liv Tyler were all great. They did a terrific job. And the biggest and most special thanks goes to Michael Bay and Jerry Bruckheimer, the makers of this film. Thanks a lot, both of you. You two make a great team.
A special thanks.
Special thanks. There you go. Bill Knight. That's the highest upvoted review. So it looks like he actually is praising the movie for performances, which is shocking to me.
Oscar worthy.
Shocking to me that he's actually looking at performances and not just going, this fucking movie is fucking amazing. So good job, Bill Knight and all the upvoters.
One scene we didn't bring up that I think is worth talking about here real quick was, and tonally I thought was significant. It's towards the end of the film where Buscemi just completely loses his marbles and starts machine gunning the rest of the crew.
Space dementia.
I guess I just didn't quite see where they were going with that, other than, Buscemi is just was kind of the wild card, and they needed something to happen, and they just needed to use that other Gatling gun.
I think that, the only argument you could make to that is that he maybe for the first time realized that him being a genius. I think maybe he knew we're not making it home from this. There's no way this is going to happen. It'd be against all odds that we did this. Takes out a huge loan, goes up to space. Fuck it, I'm going to die, right? Maybe he realized, we've actually landed. We started drilling. We might actually make it out of here. And maybe he's like subconsciously sabotaging himself. Am I giving the screenplay too much credit?
Maybe not. I don't know.
Yes.
I mean, at the end of the day, it was a bloated screenplay, but I doubt that was the screenwriter's fault. That's the kind of movie
it was
I feel
like 7 writers, including J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, I had a bunch of I was just gonna say, I feel like that's the kind of movie that just has a lot of fingers in the pie. Someone wrote a good screenplay, a bunch of other people wanted to get a writing credit, and it just kind of became a bloated 2.5-hour thing that still kind of works, but could have been 45 minutes shorter and probably a lot better.
I mean, we could have cut out the whole Russian space station blow up thing, but that would only saved us about 12 minutes.
And how many things can blow up on one space station? In that scene, I was like, it was like
constantly blowing up and moving.
One,
and
I mean, how
the
big
next.
was that? It was like, I mean, just there was like 35 separate explosions.
It's like it was rigged for self-destruction once one part of it went.
Yeah,
that felt fun though. I don't know. I like that scene because it was just
fun.
It was so silly fun that everything was super tight and compact, and there's 20 guys just crawling around, speeding through things to get it all done.
The scene in the sequence, I'd say, in itself was fine, but if you're going to cut something out, that would be one of the first things to go, just to streamline the story, because it really didn't do a lot. It did a little bit because it got the Russian to be with them.
Yeah,
he didn't really do anything ultimately. He didn't need to be with
them. He helped
them.
AJ at the end, right? Wasn't he he was the astronaut to the...
Yeah.
There's always an astronaut to the other character.
You're right. He did. So there was that.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. I don't know. It was fun. It was probably the most horrific kind of scene where it's horror moment. It almost felt more dangerous than the actual asteroid, even though it was growling at you in comparison. But
so, okay, one other rapid fire. And I think this is not specifically about this film, but in the right vein. What is the best disaster movie of all time? And if you guys need a quick second.
I mean, the first one that comes to my mind is Independence Day.
Yeah, same.
I'm not saying that's my answer, but good Lord, that one
hard to beat.
That one really, really went for it and succeeded.
You know what movie I like better than that you brought up earlier? Fifth Element.
Disaster movie?
Yeah, into the
1,000%.
into the world.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
I like that movie better than Independence Day. I love Independence Day, but I really love me some Fifth Element.
It's a better movie.
I actually designed some Fifth Element T-shirts because I love that movie so much.
So good.
It's so fun.
Yeah. Now, would a sequel to that movie be a good thing or a bad thing? Now, we know Bruce Willis has like dementia now or something, so that's probably not going to happen. But let's say Fifth Element 2 was coming out. Would we be excited about that, or do we think that would be a disgrace?
I'm going to say something that I normally wouldn't say. I'd say yes, because I hate sequels. But I think I know, right? Can you believe it? The Fifth Element.
Your character arc in this episode was impressive.
Best
character
arc.
Indeed.
I would say the Fifth Element, one of the things the Fifth Element did so good was world build.
So good.
Just an original idea. The world building just was so rich and complex and diverse and quirky and strange. And we've got this world now, and it's like, it'd be like if Star Wars didn't make a sequel, It's like, whoa, let's explore this world now, So I'd say, yeah, although it's been too long.
And just the kind of aesthetic of that movie was it reminded me of a newer movie that I thought had a similar feel was Alita Battle Angel.
Mm-hmm.
It had kind of those big sort of clunky robot kind of, just a very distinct futuristic aesthetic that I just think is really cool. But,
I mean, Chris Tucker's still making stuff. He just came out with a movie. I mean, Mia Jovovich, she's still making stuff. Gary Oldman's still working. Debo, I don't know if he's still alive.
I think he's around.
He's the president.
Yeah.
We sadly wouldn't have Bruce Willis, so I don't know if we could do it, but there's a lot of people that could reprise roles.
Yeah, the only reason I would ever want a 3D printer is to make a multi-pass ID badge.
Lily Multipass.
I gotta quickly correct myself. Tommy Lister Jr. Debo, R.I.P.
Okay, I thought I had read
a couple
that.
years ago.
Yeah,
a couple years ago. Yeah.
So Fifth Element, disaster movie. I still would say, as a pure straight ahead disaster movie, I'm gonna go ahead and lock in my answer with Independence Day.
Yeah, nobody's mad at that. Okay, all right, gents. What kind of closing thoughts do we have about this fine Michael Bay film?
Closing thoughts from me. I think maybe I can sum it all up in one sentence. The premise of training drillers to be astronauts rather than the other way around is so absurd.
That's a great point. I didn't think about that.
That's like the great debate of this film.
I never really
that
never
I'm shocked we
occurred
haven't
to me,
talked
but
about
that's
it, but
a great idea. I mean, great point, yeah.
I know it's been talked about like to nausea with this film in general, but that's shocking you didn't know that. I don't know, it's just such a rewatchable film for me. And I know that I've just rewatched it so many times that it has so many little nuggets, and it's probably because it's got 7.5 million cuts that I'm like, oh, there's a lot of stuff going on here. I can kind of find something new every time. But
yeah,
I don't know, it's just the rewatchability.
I can see why I liked it. I still can see why I would get enjoyment and value out of it. I also would say I think it's a relatively well-made movie, but it's so absurd and so dumb that I've got to knock a lot of points off. It's way too dumb for me, and it does not treat it offends my intelligence as a But again, that's why I'm conflicted with this movie, because clearly 16-year-old me loved it, and it did not. So I'm really conflicted on my closing thoughts on this. I don't have one specific thing I can say to sum it up. So I'll just leave it with that.
Let me ask this question though, then, because I think that's interesting. So if you had seen this movie for the first time, a week ago, how many points lower do you think it would have been? I assume would not be any points higher.
Wouldn't be any higher for me. I honestly don't think it would be a lot lower. And because I don't think a lot of my rating is tied up in nostalgia. I think it's tied up in enjoyability. And I see all the. I probably maybe it would be higher. Maybe I'd watch it and I'd go, "Holy crap! Steve Buscemi was in this." I would be like, "All these people were in this movie." Like, whoa, maybe I'd like it a little more. I don't know.
Mine could almost be 10 points higher if I had first watched this, just out of the number of famous actors and cameos and just the absurdity of it all. I would just have a lot of fun with it, I think.
I just assumed you guys would definitely rate it lower, but I guess that's kind of interesting because it is such a stacked cast. I mean, it's just fun to see.
I mean, it's a cohesive. It is what it. I think I'd watch it and I'd go, okay, this is what they were doing back 20 years ago. Cool.
Yeah. And admittedly, I mean, even in 2023, as we talked about a little bit, I mean, the CGI in this movie is pretty damn good especially for the time, and even holds up pretty well today.
I remember being blown away by that in '98. I remember being blown away, going, I did not know that a movie like this could be made.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, my final thoughts are, as I kind of said in the beginning, this movie is a kind of a true assault on the senses in a way that I think few movies can replicate. Maybe a few, but not many. It's just kind of like a 2.5-hour music video, and it works. Ultimately, I think it works. It's fatiguing. It is clearly for teenagers. And I, kind of as we talked about last week with Twilight, I think it's a movie that set out to do something and pretty much knocks it down, pretty much accomplishes what it set out to do.
Hey, real quick, you just made me think of this. Why did girls like this movie? I feel like it was universally accessible in a way that most Michael Bay movies aren't.
Yeah, I think it had a pretty strong relationship thread.
There's a love story.
Yeah, there's the big love story, and then
that's the answer.
Yeah. And there's some hunky dudes. I mean, I can see it's got some stuff for the ladies. But yeah, thank you, everybody, for listening to us ramble about Armageddon. Join us next time on Critical Mess, when we will be talking about Vanilla Sky.
Vanilla Sky.
Yes, the Tom Cruise, Penelope Cruz, lots of Cruise.
We're staying right in the turn of this millennia era.
Yep, similar era. And a movie that I'm sure we will have a lot to say about.
Man, I haven't watched this movie in 20 years. I can't wait to see if it holds up.
I'm on a similar page with you. It's
I've
probably
never
been 15.
seen it, so I've
You've
only
never
I've
seen
only
it?
seen
Wow.
clips. So I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but I've only seen clips and bits and pieces of it, and I know some facts about it, but I've never actually sat and seen the movie.
I think you will have polarizing thoughts about this movie, but I could be wrong, but that's my guess.
You guys want to take guesses on what my score might be?
Not
For Vanilla Sky? Oh,
Yeah.
gosh. I
haven't seen it recently enough
Okay.
to...
I could answer that question after I watch it again now,
Okay. All right.
and I can guess. Now, we were almost going to do a movie that I would argue assaults your senses to the same degree as Armageddon, and that's Natural Born Killers. But we just so slightly, for certain reasons, decided to skip over to Vanilla Sky and do that one. We will do Natural Born Killers at some point. It is on our list, but Vanilla Sky is the choice.
Yeah, and to remind you, we have plenty of episodes already now. This is number 8.
Well,
so.
and our episodes are numbered with 2 leading zeros. So
yeah.
we're at least doing 1,000.
Sounds about right.
What are we going to be, 78?
We'll get there. We'll get there, guys. All right, to all you listeners out there, thank you very much. We can't believe there are literally tens of you at this point, and that's really fucking cool. Please keep listening. We promise to keep getting better and keep having fun doing this thing. You're all awesome. We love you, and we will see you next time.
See ya!
Later.